If you tell your brain that you're going to be scared or show up or, dart out the door when questions are asked or not raise your hand or whatever the case may be, your brain is happy to supply you with that because our brains want to keep us safe. And that's, psychologically safe, physically safe, all the things. So I got into just telling my brain what I wanted it to do, and down to when I can't figure something out, maybe it's technology, et cetera, I'll say, I'm going to figure this out after lunch, or I'm going to put this away now. I'll figure it out in the morning. And that way my brain knows my expectation is that we'll figure this out.
Yeah.
As opposed to, I can't do it. I don't know how to do this part. When I hear people say, I don't know how, I'm like, no, you're learning and growing.
Yep.
It's not about whether you know how or not. It's about whether you're setting the stage to learn how.
Welcome back to another episode of the Sales Gravy Podcast. In the studio with me today is the great, the wonderful, the amazing Cheryl Parks, who flew all the way here from Oakland, California. You'll recall that she was on the podcast earlier this spring, and it was an amazing episode. So I'm thrilled to have her in the studio with me today. Now, before we get started, I want you to go check out Sales Gravy University. Sales Gravy University is the #1 sales training platform on earth, and it's a place where you can bring your entire team to learn from 40 plus of the world's top sales experts and trainers, including Cheryl, who is shooting courses now for Sales Gravy University. And your team can attend live courses taught by our master trainers every single week. Now, if you've never taken a course on Sales Gravy before, use the code FREECOURSE. Just go to learn.salesgravy.com. That's learn.salesgravy.com. If you've never taken a course before, pick any course you want and use the code FREECOURSE. Cheryl, welcome to Sales Gravy Studios.
Thank you so much. I'm super excited to be here and have this conversation.
So let's just start with, you flew here from Oakland, California,
Yes.
to Thompson, Georgia.
Yes.
So what's the difference between Oakland, California and Thompson, Georgia?
Sure. I will say the weather is what hits me first. So we've got sunny weather in California, but this is warm, humid, and I think there's some sun out there.
Like when you got off the airplane, it's like hitting a wall, right?
Yes, a nice sticky wall. So yeah, it's a fantastic town, great city. I flew into Augusta, beautiful airport, I have to say. Only airport I've ever seen that has crown molding throughout it. And but yeah, I'm really excited to be here with you and your team.
Awesome. So we brought you in to shoot some courses for Sales Gravy University. Can you give us a little preview of what you're working on?
Yeah, actually, so I'm a huge proponent of going from inconsistent salesperson or rep or sales leader or entrepreneur to trusted advisor. I think that our buyers want that now. I think that if you're not trying to become a trusted advisor and really understand what they're looking for, you're probably in the noise of the traditional salesperson.
Okay, so I love I love the term trusted advisor, and I love it when I get into that space where I know that that's how my client looks at me. And it's a difficult thing to get to that place because there's a lot of like the trusted part's probably the biggest thing. And they have to really see that you are a person that's on their side and has their back and you're working for their best interest.
Yes.
And that takes time, it takes effort, it takes intention. Before we jump into that, because I want to pull us back towards the end of the podcast and we'll talk a little bit more about this idea of trusted advisor. I want to hop on the Wayback Machine and learn a little bit more about you.
Sure.
You know, think about some of these podcasts we hop on and all we do is just talk about sales stuff.
Right.
So let's go back to growing up. Like, tell me about, how you grew up, where you grew up, and how did you evolve into the person that you are today?
Yeah. Interesting question. So I will say that growing up, my father was a Xerox executive for all of my childhood. And my childhood was a great one, exposed to lots of things, whether it be travel, music, sports, bowling, all the things. I mean, literally, that was their thing. My parents were like, you're going to be exposed to all these things. And at the end of the day, I started to realize it's making a pretty good living. Like I'm having a nice childhood here, right? So as I got older, I thought to myself, yeah, I think I want to go into sales. About the age of 14, he decided I'm going to become an entrepreneur. Like I'm moving away from corporate. We're going to move to California and I'm going to just open the doors.
And you moved from where?
Rochester. So as he was an executive, we lived it started in Rochester. We lived in Boston, Massachusetts, or just outside there, Columbus, Ohio, back to Rochester. Lots of moving around. At that time, he was a VP of sales and marketing when they were both
Okay.
together. So
I remember those
yeah,
days.
yeah, right. So lots of interesting travel, meeting lots of different people. And he just decided that I'm going to bet on me, and decided California would be a great place to do it. I don't know if that's necessarily the case or not, but we literally moved to California when I was 14. And when you speak about how I became the person I am, I went into a debilitatingly shy state of my life when I got to California.
You didn't know anybody.
I didn't know anybody. And it was like first part of high school, right? That like impactful time. And I literally got there and just went into my room. I'd go to school and go
Just
back to my room.
So before we dive into the shy Cheryl, which I
Mhm.
can't even imagine at this point, but um, when your dad was an executive at Xerox and you were a kid, did you ever go to his office, or did he ever take you to like conferences, like your family? Did y'all go? Did you see him work?
I saw him work. At that point, the remote work from home was not available.
Mm.
I saw him work on launches for product
Mm.
that were very cool in terms of seeing the creative side come together, and then knew how it impacted sales. So I saw him launch things where they had celebrities come in to do things. They had, T-shirts printed.
Yeah.
They had team, and there were lots of celebrations when the launch went well. I didn't really see the ones that didn't go well, which probably impacted me as well. But at the end of the day, I visited his office periodically. I just knew he worked in, one of the high-rise buildings. And at that time, it was Xerox and Kodak in the city of Rochester. So there was a lot of respect given for people that worked at those two companies. So I'm sure if I really think back to my thinking about being in sales, a lot of it came from that space.
I remember when I was a kid going to my dad's office. So he was in a high rise. It was the only high rise in Augusta, Georgia at the time. And I just remember the way it smelled. Like we were at home. We lived on a farm, a small farm, but we had horses and
Sure.
goats and stuff. And then we went to downtown and went up to the building, and I
Right.
can remember the way it smelled and the windows, like looking out in the high rise. But I went to work enough times that I kind of learned like how work worked,
Mhm.
and you had to be polite, and you had to dress nice, and you would go to the office. But it was just the smell that I remember the most, that it was like this cool change. Like you were at home, and then this was completely different from an environment.
Right. I totally concur. I remember always looking up at the high rise and seeing how sleek it
Mm.
was, right? You see all these windows that go on forever and ever. And that's probably something that impacted me was, you're working on the 48th floor. You
Yeah.
can see all of the city, things like that. So I think as a kid, yeah, those are the things that we remember.
Very good. Okay, so you get to California, and you're in a different world, different people, and you imagine, I mean, California is a long way from Rochester,
Yeah,
New York. I mean, you're talking about a completely different
100%.
group of human beings that you're dealing with.
Yes. Yes.
Um, so you go into this shy stage.
Yeah, so I get there and I've got great friends in New York that I'm leaving, and I get there and I'm literally going to school, coming back, going into my room, into my cave, so to speak. And just kind of wondering like, what is this? Why am I here? And I met some really nice people. I don't want to negate the fact that I've got good friends in California. But at the end of the day, I just became very quiet and I started observing more than I was interacting. And I mean, this went on for years and years. I'd probably say 7 or 8 years. I just became an observer of human behavior. And so looking back, I know that I was watching what motivates people to do things and say things, and what motivates them or inspires them to show up the way they show up. And that is a huge part of who I am as a salesperson or a sales leader, is that I really think there's a lot to be said around not only asking great questions, but understanding we're all motivated and inspired differently. And so that human behavior factor became a large part of it.
Now, you when you get to California, you go into this hole, and then you move into this place where, and I think that's cool. You become an observer of human behavior, influence, what drives people. along the way, your dad has now moved into becoming an entrepreneur.
Right.
Tell me what that's like as a family, where your dad goes from going to the office
Mhm.
and has a powerful job,
Mhm.
and now entrepreneur working for himself.
Mhm.
As a family, what does that do?
So as a family, we went from, in my estimation, as a young person, having no budget to now we have a budget
Okay.
because there's not the stability of the corporate job,
Hmm.
and so there were just lots of decisions that had to be made around. My dad's an entrepreneur. My mom was in nursing, which I'll explain later how I think that impacted me. But at the end of the day, we were always kind of looking to see like what needs to happen first, second, and last. In addition, and I will say that this stays in my mind, my dad carried his briefcase everywhere he went. And I mean, Thanksgiving, Christmas, he was like, you never know when business is going to break out. So we have a lot more work life balance these
Hmm.
days, but my dad had his briefcase all the time.
I love that. I love it because when I'm working with inside sales teams, for example, they have the ability to turn their phone off, right?
Mhm.
So especially we're talking about inbound sales teams where the company's spending a lot of money to make the phone ring.
Right.
And these are typically either capital equipment or high-end B2B or software companies
Mhm.
where the phones are, well, they'll turn it off. And I'm always like, you need to be ready. Like you never know. And when you're talking about outside salespeople, field salespeople who are going out and maybe they're canvassing an industrial park or what have you, and they're walking in a door and the owner says, yeah, come on back. And they have to go back out to their car to get their briefcase. I'm like, we don't carry briefcases anymore, but I'm like,
Right.
you need to have everything that you would need at that moment. If they want to buy from you, ready, be ready. So your dad was ready,
He was always ready.
always ready. But would it, because I know what happened in my family when I moved from the corporate world into becoming an entrepreneur. We started this company 17 years ago.
Mhm.
I went from, in my estimation, working really, really hard. But I could go to the gym in the afternoons and, I had, I travel, but I had space. I went from having margin in my life to no margin in my life.
Right.
I would work all day long. We would have dinner together. My wife and my son would go like watch their evening TV shows or what
Mhm.
have you. And I'd be back in my office
Right.
working until 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, get 4 hours of sleep. And I would do it again. And I did that for like 5 years trying to get the business off the ground.
Yes.
So, did you experience that with your dad where he was like pouring himself into this business?
I did. He opened a couple of businesses at the same time. One of them he had partners, and one of them was his baby. And I remember asking him, why did you invest more in the partnership than you did in your own business? And that question to me was really forward thinking as,
Mhm.
a young person. And he said he thought the return on the partnership might be better than the return on his individual business or sole proprietorship, so to speak. And I thought to myself, you should always bet on you. Like, right?
Right.
So at the end of the day, I did. I watched him work hard, long hours, always Saturday.
Yeah,
Always
always
Saturday.
Saturday.
Always Saturday. I'm sure there were Sundays in there, but I knew Saturday, it literally was a 6-day work week,
Mhm.
period. Sunday was probably let's pick up what needs to be handled. And then at the end of the day, it was just, he was always out meeting people, talking, just continually sharing what he did, the solutions he provides,
So he was
things
a
like that.
fanatical prospector.
Yes, exactly. What
Yeah,
100%.
he had a business card with him everywhere he went.
Everywhere.
If he started having a conversation, he whipped it out and said, "Here, call me."
That's right. That's right.
Always on,
if you
always
know someone,
prospecting.
exactly.
I love it. What were the businesses? I'm just curious.
One of them was the one that was his baby was industrial goods and supplies,
Hmm.
and the other one was a restaurant that he opened with his partners. And the restaurant did not remain because when you have partners, there's discussions
Yeah,
and personalities and all the things. But his industrial products company soared.
yeah. So you were right about investing in yourself.
Yeah.
I can't think of probably a worse business than owning a restaurant with partners.
Right,
I mean,
exactly. Working on your house, maybe with general contractors.
maybe that's it. Maybe that's it. But I love the fact that you watched your dad become that person who, and I'm sure for him it was a change too. Because I know at least for me, I moved from a corner office in a really tall building in Atlanta
Mhm.
with a couple of assistants to sitting in my home office in my flip flops,
Right,
banging the phone trying to find people that would do business with me, and it was a
right.
massive shift. Like it was almost like an ego shift to have to
Mhm.
move from, hey, nobody's going to help you today.
Right.
So
Have to help yourself.
you got to go figure this out. So So I love one lesson, and I hope everybody's paying attention to this. Bet on yourself, and that takes a lot of confidence and courage. But you, if it's going to be, I think they say it's up to me, right?
Yes. Yes. I grew up with that quote, by the way.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Very good. So you're along the way while you're and tell me if I'm wrong.
Mhm.
You're kind of you move from a different environment. You move into kind of a shell.
Mhm.
You start observing people, and at the same time, you're watching your father,
Mhm.
and your mom supporting the family while this is happening,
Definitely.
which is exactly what my wife did.
Yes,
Like
definitely.
we like it was like do or die.
That's
I would
right.
come home in the afternoons. My wife would say, "What'd you sell?"
Right.
You know, I'm like,
Right.
so your mom's working hard, supporting the
Mhm.
family. Your dad's working hard. I don't know what happened in your family, but in my family, what eventually happened was the business got big enough that it didn't make sense for my wife to continue supporting the family. It made sense for her to get into the business, which now today
Right.
she's runs everything.
Yes.
But you're seeing that shift into entrepreneurship and what it takes
Yes.
to win.
Yes.
How did that impact you? And let's just flip forward to today as an
Yeah.
entrepreneur. How did watching someone go through this? Because this is not easy,
Mhm.
and it's not easy on a family.
Right.
I work every Saturday now. Like there's no Saturday I take
That's
off.
right. That's right.
I've already got my day mapped out for Saturday. And I always tell people, like, you're prospecting entrepreneurs, call them on Saturday morning.
Right.
They're probably in a good mood,
Yeah.
and they're probably
Saturday.
available,
They
but
have
they're
time.
working.
Mhm.
So how does that impact you today?
So today, I'm always looking at how I'm programmed, right? So you
Mhm.
want to make sure, me personally, I feel like working smarter as opposed to kind of digging ditches. And so I'm always looking to see how can I be better prepared? How can I move the needle faster when I do connect with someone and
Mhm.
I call it being better in the moment,
Okay.
and as opposed to just letting the moment happen and being intentional. Watching that unfold, I'll bring my mom into it now. Yes, 100% always focused and supportive. My mom was in nursing, and it's only just occurred to me, like in the last 3 to 5 years, that her career had a huge impact on me because what do nurses do? They triage.
Yep.
They triage quickly. And it was asking pointed questions to get to what is actually going on so that I can relay it to the rest of the team. So it took me a while to understand how impactful it was. I also think the compassion part, right? Servant leader, all the things.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I've talked to medical professionals that think I'm in the medical field because I know how to succinctly tell them what they need to hear. Without the long, drawn out story of auntie who did this with my uncle, and this is how like they really want the facts and just the facts. So there's this balance that I have to kind of work with on the, succinctly telling the story, but also adding the compassion and understanding that people want more than facts when you're in B2B. They want to understand story. They want to understand success. They want to look at what the journey looks like. They want to understand how much bandwidth they need to have to make the success happen, things like that. So I'm always kind of factoring in additional
Love that.
things.
My term for that's called dual process. Dual
Yes.
process is the ability, and this is not an easy thing, but it's the ability to have empathy and be focused on outcome at the same time without those being two opposing values.
Yes.
Very difficult.
Very difficult.
But when you can pull it off, that is the pathway to becoming a trusted advisor and getting to the point. A few weeks ago, we had Will Yarborough on, and we published this podcast earlier in the summer, and we were talking about shorter sales cycles,
Mhm.
and that somehow in the last couple of years after the pandemic, and I can feel it's happening, that we've gone from really long sales cycles with these intense buying committees that are taking forever. That's not to say that those aren't still there. There's
Right.
always groups of people making decisions, to buyers who are coming in hot
Mhm.
and they're essentially ready to go, but they need you to very quickly take them through a decision journey, and do it in a way that connects empathy with outcome, but sell the deal. And
Yes.
one of the things we talked about was how every conversation matters, and I think that's one of the things that you, uh, as you think about being an entrepreneur and think about working with your mom and learning triage she's a healthcare provider, is that you have to be in the moment and be ready
Yes.
and you can't let what did you say? Let the moment just happen. You've got
Right.
to make it happen.
Yes.
I think that's crucial. I think salespeople today have to recognize that you may not get a second chance on
Right.
your conversation.
Yeah. I think one of the stats I read is like your buyer will spend 17% of their time in I'll call it a face-to-face scenario. But that's not just with you. That's with everyone competing for their business on one particular area.
Yeah.
That's not a lot of time.
No.
Yeah.
No.
And I think sometimes you just get eliminated quickly, and they may not even know they've eliminated you.
Yeah.
They may continue talking to you knowing that you're really not the viable option here, right? Just to kind of cross T's and dot I's on that particular decision.
Absolutely. Okay, so back to shy Cheryl.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Okay.
if we draw the story, your dad's building the business. I'm sure the business is getting better. The industrial business moved. Mom's taking care of the family, paying the bills while your dad moves forward, living on a budget. Know how it is, you know.
Definitely.
The nice thing about being an entrepreneur is that there comes a point where you don't have to live on a budget anymore, but there's a while where you by God do.
That's right.
And the business comes first.
Mhm.
That's just how it's going to work. It's either you either sell or die. That's
That's
it.
right.
You spend 7-8 years observing people. So you're coming out of high school. What happens next?
Yeah. So I go to college, and I'm going through the process, and
Now, where'd you go to school?
University of Houston.
University of Houston.
Yeah, I did.
And University of Houston's got a great professional selling program.
I just saw that. I
Yep.
was looking at that for something else, but yes, they do. So I went to University of Houston, and I'm going through the process, and you get to a point. I always say it happens in a moment, and I was always a list of things to do person. I've got my vision and what I want and all the goals, and I just looked at my goals, and I'm like, this is never gonna happen. This will not happen with you being this shy, not showing up for yourself in the background all the time. You're going to have to do something different. And I didn't know what it was, but I figured it out. I'm like, I want to live the life I was living when my dad was an executive. And I don't want to live this life of being in the background and not showing up for myself and just letting things happen. So I decided I had to change my mindset. And I don't know how I figured this out when I did, because we're talking decades ago.
Yeah.
But I just mindset marched my way through, and I tell people this all the time. I took an inventory of what happens when I get nervous and I want to flight, right? Because in fight or flight, it was like, I just want to duck out the door. So, some people get sweaty palms, some people get the shoulders, the headache, the knot in your stomach. Mine was a knot in your stomach. And when it came, I inserted a mantra into my head. And the first mantra I used was be your excellent best in the moment. That's all you can be. Just be your excellent best. So I would calm myself with that mantra. I've had 5 or 6 since then, but at the end of the day, I had to figure out a way to change the negative programming in my head of like, this is scary. Don't say anything. Don't raise your hand. Don't ask the next question. Somebody else will ask it. People out there know what I'm talking about. It happens. So that was probably one of the first stages. And then from there, I decided, why don't you just figure out an alter ego? People do that all the time now, but I was doing it way back. And I'm like, well, who do you want to be? So I started holding up who I wanted to be. And over time, who I was and who I wanted to be got closer and closer together. And I still have shyness in me. I will walk the dog and there'll be people outside, neighbors, and I'm like, oh, I'll just walk around the block one more time. Don't want to talk right now. So I call myself an ambivert. I can show up with extrovert energy, but as well, I still need that introvert time to refresh.
I totally get where you're coming from. I'm a total introvert. People don't get that, but and there were a bunch of neighbors. I was walking 2 days ago, and there were a couple of my neighbors were holding dogs and in the street, and I just sort of moved on around them. I didn't really want to talk. I was just on my walk. I was listening to my podcast.
Yes.
But I would say probably the same way. I can be a total extrovert in a sales environment,
Definitely.
but in most social environments, I prefer to be by myself. But I also believe that introverts make great salespeople
Really,
because you know how to shut up and listen.
That's right. Short version, shut up and listen.
Yeah, basically. So this concept of mindset marching, I've never heard that before.
Yeah.
It's a really cool play on words. Talk to me about that.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, I'm just a firm believer that your brain does what you tell it to do.
Okay.
So if you tell your brain that you're going to be scared or show up or, dart out the door when questions are asked or not raise your hand or whatever the case may be, your brain is happy to supply you with that because our brains want to keep us safe. And that's, psychologically safe, physically safe, all the things. So I got into just telling my brain what I wanted it to do, and down to when I can't figure something out, maybe it's technology, et cetera, I'll say, I'm going to figure this out after lunch, or I'm going to put this away now. I'll figure it out in the morning. And that way my brain knows my expectation is that we'll figure this out
Yep.
as opposed to I can't do it. I don't know how to do this part. When I hear people say, I don't know how, I'm like, no, you're learning and growing.
Yep.
It's not about whether you know how or not. It's about whether you're setting the stage to learn how.
That's kind of how I write books. I'm writing a book right now called Fanatical Prospecting Sequences,
Mhm.
and it's a big book. It's this thing's a bear. It's
Yeah.
complicated, and I enjoy writing. I love it. Yesterday, I just hit a wall, and I'm trying to work through how to say some things. So, 4:30 yesterday afternoon, I'm like, okay, well, I'm not going to get anywhere else.
Mhm.
So I went out and I walked 9 holes and played golf. Just walked with my bag by myself
Yes.
and listened to Taylor Swift music.
Yes.
I don't know why, but it was just whatever
Right.
the Spotify was throwing up. It was mostly Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
So I came home, went to bed last night,
Mhm.
and all night long my brain worked. And when I woke up this morning, that's why I was late to this podcast. It all came together. Like I knew
Right.
exactly what to do. Like I moved this over here and did this over here, and
Yeah.
then I'm like, okay, it's all there. And sometimes that's what you have to do is you have to recognize instead of saying I don't know how to do it or I can't do this, I can't figure it out.
Mhm.
You just I love that. You just tell your brain, I just know my brain. I'm like, okay,
Right.
I'm going to sleep on this. It'll get right.
That's
I'll
right.
figure it out.
Yeah.
And it always does. It always works that way. It
Yeah.
just sometimes you got to go take a walk.
Yeah. I love the idea of getting inspired by doing other things,
Mhm.
right? So I'm a sunset lover. So if I put something away, it's like I'm going to go chase a good looking sunset. Taking a walk, water is great for me. Just knowing music is great. Whatever your thing is, we're all inspired differently. It could be that going to an art museum, whatever that is, being with family, do that for a little while. Give your brain time to rest and it'll come back for you.
Mhm.
It just needs to rest and refresh and rejuvenate itself, just like any I know I believe I looked this up. I don't think your brain's a muscle, but just like muscles in your body,
It is.
it needs to refresh.
I do believe that your brain does what you tell it to do. And we just came off of the Summer Olympics, and if you listen to those athletes talk, the difference between winning and losing, 400ths of a second for a gold medal is often what's in here in your
That's right.
brain, not what your talent is.
Yes, yes. I'm always just fully enamored with high performers, and Olympians are that clearly. And I will say it is not lost on me that you prepare for 4 years for 10 seconds, right? Or to beat someone by a half a second. That is definitely the peak of telling your brain what to do and strengthening, your resolve.
So you're at the University of Houston, which, by the way, is more humid than Augusta, Georgia. We're all just saying. And you're beginning to have the persona, the Cheryl Parks that is going to
Mhm.
be a high powered, money making executive, living the good life. And the shy Cheryl are coming together,
Mhm.
and you're evolving.
Yes.
What happens next?
So I started to understand that my superpower really was relationships. And at the time, I was in a B2B kind of sphere that was more relationship based than transactional. So I knew it was in the right place. I started selling copiers, but I did it in a way where relationship was the thing, focusing on target accounts, et cetera. And then from there, I just started to understand where I could accelerate, what my differentiator was, as opposed to just marching down the same sales rep street. I decided to kind of branch out. So I was always the salesperson that would I'd be a hunter and a farmer in the same space.
Mhm.
And one of my VPs, who I absolutely loved, would always say, I always look at your numbers and turn my head to the side because I know you're doing both. And so he's like, I see the new business and I see the farming side of it. And he would always I was the only one on the sales team with 10. And they
Mhm.
just leveraged my talent to build relationship and enhance business or increase business along with the new business development.
That's a very, very difficult thing to do. There is a thin slice of humans, thin slice of humanity, thin slice of salespeople who have the ability to both farm and hunt at the same time. Most people can't.
Yes.
I can say that I've been in that role,
Mhm.
and I did it for long enough to be super successful at it, but it didn't really give me a lot of joy.
Right.
I'm a hunter at
Mhm.
heart. I
Mhm.
like to hunt. I'm not a big time farmer.
Right.
Uh, and I had to force myself to do the farming side
Yeah.
effectively.
Mhm.
But there are people that can do that. The ambivert, when you just explain
Mhm.
that really is the middle of the ground.
Right.
If we looked at you on the empathy scale, you'd probably be a 5, right in the middle, right?
Right.
The ability to be outcome driven, the ability to be super empathetic.
Yes.
Uh, I think probably the biggest mistake that companies make is they're trying to find people like you,
Right.
and you're rare.
Right.
And so they end up plugging people like me, which
Right.
are, square peg and round hole, and go, you
Mhm.
got to do both things. And, you're not happy.
Yeah, 100%. I think at the end of the day, it's also building a portfolio and it takes a lot of
Mhm.
discipline because you've got to have the new business side of it as well as the farming or account management side of it. But it's building your portfolio and knowing where you're going to pull levers. How am I going to get both of them to work so that I am above quota consistently?
So weird question. I'm just curious.
Mhm.
Why, when you got out of school, did you choose to go get a job versus to start your own thing?
I would have to say, let's see. So when I got out of school, my dad would have been in business for about 11 years. I think I was still feeling the sting of entrepreneurship and knowing that when he was in corporate, life was so cool. So my, early 20, mid 20 brain was like, I kind of like the life was so cool part. And I decided that I would go to corporate. Now, the other thing was, I really knew that I needed to have outcome and results behind me. And I also knew I wanted the training.
Yeah.
So had I jumped directly into entrepreneurship, I wouldn't have gotten all the training that I
So how long were you in the corporate world before things switched and you decided I'm gonna do my own thing?
Yeah. So, you might say I stayed a long time. I was in there for 25 years.
Okay, good.
Literally 25 years. 12 of them spent at a Fortune 750 company, where I actually learned quite a bit there, multi-threading, all the things, selling as a team, multi-million dollar deals sold there. So just confidence level, obviously, made really good income there. But when we divorced, uh, they divorced me. I took a
Been there, done
package.
that, got that t-shirt.
Right. I said, I'm gonna just make a decision. Am I going back
Mm.
or am I going to do something different? I did a lot of different things. I took coding classes. I thought, well, maybe I'll be a coder. And realized, God bless all the coders out there. I'm not a coder. So I drove for Lyft for a while.
Shy Cheryl would have been a
Shy,
coder.
Shy Cheryl. Yeah, I drove for Lyft for a while. I just said, I'm just gonna just do something and get inspired and figure out where my next
What was
step
it like
is.
driving for Lyft?
So I'm going to share this.
I mean, as an observer of human beings.
Yeah, I had my mantra for Lyft was you will feel better when you get out of this car than you did when you got in.
I love
That
it.
was literally just my thought. It didn't mean I needed to talk. Maybe you just wanted quiet. It could be music. Obviously, I need to get you there
Mhm.
safely for that to actually occur. But I just had a thought about how I wanted to treat people. So again, going back into, who am I?
Hey,
Right?
this is a powerful, powerful lesson for salespeople.
Yeah.
That when you are engaging in a sales conversation, your prospect or customer should
Yeah.
feel better coming out of that conversation
Yes.
than when they went into the conversation. If you hold that as a mantra,
Yeah.
you are going to win deals.
That's right. Yeah, because
Wow.
buyers want to be seen, heard, and valued, period. All of us do. And so I just really started to focus on like, who am I at the core? And that's what I came up with. So yeah, so I drove for Lyft, I don't know, 6 months or something. And then I said, okay, it's time to make a decision. So I said, I'm not going back to corporate. I think I had a few interviews and I have to say, I was like, this is kind of like replay. I think I'm just going to bet on me, as I told my dad back in the day. And I said, I I know I can teach, train, support, coach, advise others on how to do this and how to do it in a way that's going to carry you forward, as opposed to just training on sales information and training on just, what you do for a living. It's so much bigger than that.
Okay, so let's go full circle back to dad carrying briefcase and business cards everywhere. So you make the decision that this is what you're going to do. You're going to start your own business, and you and I have a very similar story. Like mine was, I got my long term. I thought I'd be there for the rest of my life. Divorced me. Big companies do that.
That's right.
That's the world that big companies are in.
Mhm.
And I'm like, I got to do something. And I like horses, and I thought, well, I could do horses, but you can't really make money doing that. So the only other thing I knew how to do was sell. So
Right.
17 years ago, figured that out.
Yes.
Uh, so you figured this out.
Mhm.
Now you're back to living on a budget.
That's right.
Okay,
That's right. That's
so
right.
so take me back to that place where you started your business,
Mhm.
and I want you to walk me through
Mhm.
what the emotions have been like for you or were like for you during that first period of time when you're getting it going.
So my emotions when I was first getting it going was, don't overthink this, first and foremost. Like, you don't need to build the whole infrastructure first. Sales is a driver. Find someone you can sell and solve a problem for.
So
And
revenue's better than putting your business card together.
that's right.
Very good.
That's
I like
right.
that. Okay.
I think I grabbed, URL and, probably paid for Zoom and whatever else I needed, but it was pretty flat, pretty nominal. I started just really out of the gate knowing I had to sell. And I was really fortunate because my first client was a very good friend of mine who I've known forever. And I was talking to her one day and she was in tears because she says, I don't want to talk a lot about it, but I have this RFP I need to do. And I don't know what an RFP is. And I'm like, do you know that's what I do for a living? And so she ended up being my first client, and actually ended up winning $250,000 worth of business because she understood how to answer the RFP so that she would make it through the steps. And as much as we love to hate RFPs, if you know how to do them, you'll put yourself in a much different position.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very good. That's how my first clients were people that I knew. They were
Yeah.
other people from the same company who had also been divorced and had gone on, unlike me, they'd gone on to executive jobs in
Yes.
other organizations. And I just called them up and said, hey, I've put my shingle out. Can you throw me a bone?
right.
And that's how I got
That's
started.
how it happens.
But I think a lot of entrepreneurs make the mistake of doing the whole field of dreams, right? I'm going to build it and then they'll come. So they build their blog and they build their social media and they do this and they do this and they do this and they understand that if you don't got money coming in, none of that really matters.
Right, right.
And I believe in my heart that the experience that you saw from your dad, you walked in, even if it was at the subconscious level, understanding that the only thing that matters
Yes.
is putting food on the table, and all that other stuff is academic. I'll get there,
Right.
but sell something first.
Right. Don't overthink it. Talk to as many people as you can. There's probably $1 million in everyone's network if you just get out and talk to people and kind of get out of your own way. So that was where I started. And I will say that I kind of fell down for a minute because I went through a business coach, great coach, but most of what she was doing was marketing and inbound. And so I got a little bit like, squirrel, like, oh, shiny object, maybe that's the way. And probably within 9 months, I came right back around to like, you just need to make calls, get in front of people.
Fanatical prospecting.
Yes.
I mean, we keep saying it, right?
That's right.
The posters are all over the studio, but the truth is that inbound will only take you so far.
Right.
And you've got to be able to, and you should be able to do both. I mean,
Exactly.
I think that's important, but you got to go out there and make calls.
That's right.
So I'm going to throw this on the table, and if you have a different experience, I want to know.
Sure.
When I started this business, I was absolutely terrified. Like I was absolutely stone cold terrified.
Okay.
I was terrified that I was going to run my family's financial situation into the ground, which
Right.
I took basically all of our life savings to build this business. I was afraid of that, but I was mostly afraid of losing and failing.
Yes.
And because I knew that I had 25 years of experience like you did
Right.
with people that were my friends. Like I mean, my entire network were the people I worked with,
Right.
and they were all watching me, and I was thinking, if I fail and have to crawl back,
Right.
I'm going to be so embarrassed and so hurt
Right.
inside. That's the thing that drove me the most. And I would like to say it was some sort of a big, audacious goal. It was mostly what drove me, what made me work my like literally to the bone. I would be so tired my body would hurt.
Mhm. Mhm.
Was I was afraid of failing.
Right.
Like I didn't want anybody to think that I couldn't
You
make
couldn't
it.
do it. Exactly. Yeah, and entrepreneurship is 100% different than sales. Just when you're working in corporate selling, you're juggling a lot, right? You're doing all the outbound and you're delivering typically in the
Mhm.
front end. And I find that that tends to be a thing where you have to really focus on how much am I delivering versus how much am I selling? Because you can get caught up delivering and then your sales numbers are going to
Yeah,
suffer.
you get on the desperation roller coaster, right?
Definitely. Yeah. And no one wants that.
Nope.
No one wants that. So for me, because I had worked so hard on my mindset is a beast. Like I just am like, this failure will not happen. Now, what I was concerned about was the timing
Right.
of how long it would take for me to get there. But I was like, I'm going to figure this out, period. So I got into it just knowing that I had to be patient. And I would say in entrepreneurship, that is probably the one thing I had to learn a lot about was patience. Things happen in their own time. And pipeline does solve everything. I've heard you say that.
Yes.
Pipeline solves everything. So the more conversations you have, the better off you'll be, but not waiting for one or two or three prospects to make a decision. Because that's when you get to
Yep.
desperation roller coaster, right? And they can hear that in your
Yes.
voice, right? And now you're emailing me every other day.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And even the style of the questions, just following up, all of those things. Yeah, no one wants that.
There's a poster right behind you. Says the pipe is life.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. So yeah, so my methodology, my mindset was really strong. I was always just watching the timing of it.
Gotcha. Carol Mahoney said she was on back in the spring, and if you haven't listened to that
I have.
episode, it was a great episode.
Yes.
She said that probably the hardest part for her was selling her, like selling herself.
Yes.
Because it wasn't like, we say in sales, you had to go sell yourself.
Right.
No, you're literally selling yourself.
Yes.
I found the same thing.
Mhm.
I found that it was really hard for me to, it was like different. Like I could sell anything that I was just not attached emotionally to.
Right.
But I was attached emotionally to me, which by
Mhm.
the way is if you have an empty pipeline, you're attached emotionally to selling something.
Correct.
That is not the right place to sell from. But I found that to be very hard. And I find it to be hard today because
Mhm.
I like what I do.
Right.
So when someone's like, "Hey, Jeb, we love you. We want you to do something," I'm like, "Okay, I'll do it."
Right. Yes.
And so I had to get some other people around me
Mhm.
to be a buffer between my emotions about what I do because I love it so much,
Yes.
and the fact that we actually do need to pay a mortgage and
Right.
and put food on the table.
That's right. That's right. And we have to watch our portfolio of what we're giving versus what we're selling, right? Yeah. At the end of the day, I think for me, I do a lot of mentoring. And I'll mentor in a moment's notice. As a matter of fact, I think I'm mentoring 3 young ladies right now. Mostly girls in sales,
Mhm.
because that is also another space where women don't really, I won't say won't thrive, but they don't enter the field
Right.
for whatever reason. So I do a lot of mentoring of women in sales, but at the end of the day, it's literally just me focusing on what needs to be done first, second, last, gaining patience. And as you mentioned, it is a big deal. That episode is excellent for anyone who hasn't watched it. It was really good. Yeah, it is a big deal for entrepreneurs just to know what direction you're going in and staying focused, right? There's so many people that will take you off your game just
Mhm.
because they don't know what you know. So they'll say things and you'll go, "Oh, maybe I should go over there." Figure out what you're really great at, where you want to differentiate and go forward and assess. You can assess what you're doing that way.
I think that's probably been our business superpower is we do not get distracted by everybody that comes along and says, I want to build a partnership with you, or I've got this, or hey, this is a brand new thing over here. And over the years, you'll see those hype machines come and go and come and go.
Yes.
And it is literally staying in your lane. And that's a good lesson for sales professionals everywhere. There's
Mhm.
never been a time in human history where you could be more distracted by so many things
Right.
that'll make your brain feel really good,
So true.
but it ain't making you any money.
That's right.
So it is stay hyper focused, stay in your lane, do the things that you're really good at, and we're so excited that we've got you here.
Yeah, me too.
You've been a bright light in our lives since we first met you. And the courses that you're building are on becoming and being a trusted advisor. Give us just a couple of your core tips.
Mhm.
Don't give away the courses. We want people to come take them.
Okay.
But give us a couple of your core tips on what it takes to cross that threshold from
Mhm.
being a salesperson to being viewed, seen, and valued
Mhm.
as a trusted advisor.
Yeah, I would say most of what I find myself talking about to clients is the shifting of the energy. And what that means, it's actually not woo woo. It's literally most of what you're writing and most of how you're communicating is around what you want, as opposed to understanding what it is the buyer's looking for to make them look like a hero. And so it's a lot of shifting the conversation. People will say things like, how do I get them to sign by the end of the
Yeah.
quarter? You don't get anyone to sign by the end
Right.
of the quarter. We're not getting anyone to do anything right now.
Right.
So how can you help them make a decision? How can you be more transparent about what if you're going to sign it Friday, the end of the quarter, or Monday? A chance we could get it signed Friday. Like, just be transparent. It's the end of the quarter for them too, as business owners and business unit owners, right? I also will mention your process is part of your product. So in sales, if you're out here
Mhm.
selling anything that will help people sell more or gain more, they're watching the way you present your services. If you can't explain like to a third grader what it is you do, you should
Right.
probably take it back in and see if you can get to a space where you could actually explain what you do to a third grader. They want you to be able to articulate that you understand their concerns and that you understand the situation they're in. And when you're providing a result or a solution, that you can get them there. You really want them to believe, right?
Right.
We're asking them to believe. And sometimes we have proof of concept and sometimes we don't. I've sold $1 million deal and it was literally a taped off open space on a floor.
Right.
And we just walked them through what it would look like when they came on board. So yeah, that was actually my first $1 million deal that I'm still super proud of because it was a tier 1 credit card company. So, okay,
I love
I'll
it.
leave that there.
Very good. Well, folks, you're going to have an opportunity very soon to experience Cheryl Parks and her courses on how to become a trusted advisor on Sales Gravy University. And people can also check you out where?
Yes. I am the sales growth coach on just about every platform. I met Jeb on TikTok, LinkedIn, YouTube, all the things. And my website is just www.thesalesgrowthcoach.com.
Awesome. Very good. And listen, if you've never taken a course on Sales Gravy University, go to learn.salesgravy.com. That's learn.salesgravy.com and use the code free course. And if you're a leader or a small business owner, check out our team hub. It's an incredibly affordable way to bring your entire team into Sales Gravy University and give them insanely good sales training at an affordable cost. Go to learn.salesgravy.com, learn.salesgravy.com, and use the code free course. We'll see you next time on the Sales Gravy Podcast. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please make sure to click like and subscribe so you never miss a single video. And if you want more sales training content, go to learn.salesgravy.com.